Hello, welcome back to the Hayley Space Knitting Podcast. My name is Hayley. I'm a 23-year-old nurse and knitter from Melbourne, Australia, and this is episode 1 of my knitting podcast. I have been going back and forth for what feels like months, maybe years, about whether or not I should start this channel and trying to find the confidence and the guts to do it. And I just decided, August was the month. I've done quite a lot of knitting in July. So I said to myself, start of August, we'll make a July podcast and we'll just upload it without thinking too hard about it and see how we go. So welcome. I hope you're well wherever you are. Here in Melbourne, it's a sunny day today, but it has been incredibly cold. I'm going to follow a traditional podcast format or structure for this podcast. So starting with finished objects and talking about works in progress, acquisitions and plans, and then I want to do a little bit of nitty chat at the end, which I think has become a bit more common on podcasts that I've watched, where people talk about sort of what they've been watching or reading or listening to. So I figure we could do a little knit and chat segment at the end. I'm going to start today with what I'm wearing. This is an old finished object. I finished this last year, so 2022, I think. I've got my notes here, by the way, so if I'm looking down a lot, sorry. I just don't want to go on too long of a tangent. This is the Dusky Rose pattern by Drops, which is a free pattern, which is knit in panels and then seamed together at the sides and at the armholes. I knit this up in Moby Morrison, which is a commercial yarn you can get from Spotlight here in Australia. I'm not sure if you can get it anywhere overseas. I'm not sure. It's very easily accessible here in Australia. And I knit it up in the colour Stone. The yarn is 50% acrylic, 25% alpaca, and 25% wool. So this sweater was the first ever sweater that I finished when I started knitting. I had used this yarn held double to knit up a vest, which was not following a pattern, was very loosely inspired by Well Loved Knits. She had a YouTube video about how to knit up a vest pattern. I wasn't willing to commit paying like $4 or something for the actual pattern, so I roughly followed the YouTube video. I knew nothing about gauge, nothing about like yarn or yarn choice or anything like that, so it came out a little bit wonky. It was cute, but I found that I didn't wear it and it just sort of sat in my closet. So I frogged that vest and then decided to knit up this sweater. I knitted up in the size large, and the only modification I really made was that I decided to pick up stitches at the sleeve and knit them top down instead of what the pattern suggests, which is to knit them bottom up. But yeah, I love this sweater. I don't find it too itchy. I think when I first put it on, I can feel it on my body, but as I wear it, I can't really tell the difference between this and like a store-bought sweater. Yeah, so that's this one, my Dusky Rose. I really love it. And I'm proud of it, like there's a few little errors here and there and some ends hanging out and, knots, because I didn't know what a magic knot was. So, a few things here and there, but I'm proud of it and it's comfy and very warm. So just what I need for this weather. What am I drinking? I'm having tea. I'm having a mango and strawberry tea. I don't know if you can see that. I'm filming on my phone, so I don't know if autofocus is really a thing. But I haven't tried this one before and I really like it. Alright, finished objects. I'm quite proud of how productive I was this month. I made some gift knits and I finished off a long-standing whip that has just been looming in my stash for ages, and it's right here drying. I blocked it last night, so I'll talk about that in a minute, but I won't be able to show you, but I can see it. That's why I keep looking over there, because I'm so proud. My first finished object though was a gift knit for my granddad. I made him a beanie around this time last year, I think it was maybe September, and he mentioned a couple months ago that beanie had grown out quite a bit. I knitted up in just some cheap acrylic from Spotlight, because that's what I had in my stash. And as I said, I didn't really know anything about yarn last year. And so he said that it got really saggy and wasn't really comfortable anymore and keeping his head warm, which is fair enough. So he asked me for a new beanie, so I knit him this. This is the Moreland Hat, another Drops Design free pattern. If you can tell, I have a lot of free patterns saved on my computer because when I first started knitting, I wanted to do it on a budget. We were in lockdown. I'll go into this in the Knitty chat portion, but we were in lockdown, so I didn't have a lot of money, but I needed a new hobby. So I downloaded so many free patterns from Drops, Lion Brand, you know, all of those websites. So I have this huge stash of free patterns. So whenever I need to knit something quick and easy, I usually just go straight to my pattern stash and pick something free from there. But yeah, this is the Moreland Hat. I used stash yarn, so my goal for this year was to stash bust, and I think I've done quite well. Again, I'll talk about that a bit later. But I had this yarn in my stash from when I went to America at the start of 2022, and my boyfriend and I got trapped there because he got COVID, so we had to wait another 6 weeks there before we could fly back to Australia. So I needed something to do, and I was crocheting at the time. So I got heaps of yarn from Joann's and started to crochet a cardigan. And then when I brought that back, it was a patchwork, like green and brown cardigan. If I have a picture, I'll put it up, but if I don't, sorry. But when I came back from the States, I got rid of that. I frogged that cardigan, which was such a trek because I knit all the patches separately and then seamed them very tightly. So frogging it was a whole mission. But this olive color was part of that cardigan, and it is Red Heart Super Saver yarn, those big like 100-gram balls or something, that you can get, and it's in an olive color. I don't know the colorway, I don't know what it's called, but it is acrylic. So the pattern is knit in the round bottom up, so from the brim upwards, in a 1x1 rib, and I knit that in a size medium. It only really took me a week to knit up because I took it to the cinema with me. I knit on it in Mission Impossible, the new Mission Impossible movie that just came out. The only modification that I made to this pattern was adding a purl row where I want the brim to be folded. That's something I knew that I wanted to do in this beanie before I even started it. And then I also modified the length. I was following the pattern for the length and I was just knitting away on it in the movie. And then when we got home, I got my boyfriend to try it on and it was looking really tall. I only had like a couple centimeters to do the decreases. So I completely stopped knitting. I was like, okay, not following the pattern anymore. We'll just start the decreases. And it came out quite well. It's a bit tall on me, but my granddad's head is wider than mine. So I'm hoping that will stretch it out and like bring it down. But the decreases are lovely. I love the look of spiral decreases on beanies. So I'm very proud with how that one came out. That was my first finished object. My next finished object was something a little extra that I wanted to knit for my granddad. As soon as he said that he wanted a beanie, I knew that I wanted to knit him a pair of socks to send with the beanie. And I didn't want them necessarily to match. He has said to me multiple times that he doesn't care what things are knit, like what color things are knit in. He just likes any color. So I was like, okay, he loves bright colors, so I might as well knit him something fun. So I would never knit something up in this colorway for myself. So I think it was really fun to actually knit something up in a random color. So I don't know if you could see them because of the focus. I'll put in some B-roll, but this is them. These are the Sunday socks by PetiteKnit. I was originally knitting up this yarn without a pattern. I had just knit up a gauge swatch and then decided to do a 1x1 rib sock without a pattern, just based on my gauge swatch, which obviously didn't work out. So I just frogged it completely. I had got to the gusset decreases, and then I was just getting so bored because I just wasn't liking how it was turning out. And then I was watching Penrose Knits. I just re-binged her 2021 Vlogmas, and she knit up a couple pairs of Sunday socks as gift knits in 2021 for Christmas. So that inspired me, and I was like, that's it. I'm frogging this random sock and I will make Sunday socks. And they came out so lovely. They remind me of the lollies we have here in Australia, Redskins, just with the same purple, pink, and like the blue color. And I love them. So the yarn is 4 Seasons pure woolen twine, which is a yarn you can also get from Spotlight. Was sitting in my stash, needed something to do with it, so decided to do socks. It's 100% Australian wool, and I was able to get gauge for the Sunday socks, which I think is an Aran weight pattern. I found it really hard to understand yarn weights and yarn sizes. I still don't have my head around it. So if you're wondering what weight a certain yarn is, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be very clear on it. But I'm getting there slowly. So for me, this is just listed as an 8-ply. But what I do with my stash yarns is I just keep trialing gauge swatches with size needles until I get the gauge that I need for a certain pattern and the fabric that I like. At the moment, because my stash has been so big with all of these random yarns that I don't have ball bands for anymore, I've just been finding patterns to match the gauge of the yarn, as opposed to finding yarn that matches the gauge of the pattern, if that makes sense. Anyway, on a tangent, Sunday socks, 2x2 rib cuff down sock. I didn't make any modifications, and I knit up the 4th size for my grandfather. They took me about 2 days, which is much better than what the other socks I was knitting took me. It was like a week in, and I was like, why am I still not finished with one sock? So very proud of those. And now that I've filmed this episode, I'm going to send these off with the beanie. Need a cup of tea. Okay, now my big finished object, my languishing whip that is finally off my needles. I cast this off, I bound this off last night at 12 a.m. I'm on night shift, okay? I've got one night off. I'm allowed to stay up late. Bound this off at 12 a.m. last night, then blocked it, like soaked it, washed it, and then laid out to dry at 1 a.m. and then went to bed. I can see it right here, that's why I keep staring at it. I love it. So I have knit up the Nordic Nights pattern, again by Drops Design. This is a free pattern. It's a top-down colourwork yoke, circular yoke with colourwork. And I knit this up in, I'm going to butcher this, Plödelopi. I think that's how you say it. It doesn't work with my Australian accent. Held double, so that's a 100% unspun Icelandic wool. And I use the Marsh Heather and Oatmeal Heather colorways. So I cast this sweater on last year, I think maybe November, when it was the weather was actually starting to warm up. We were getting into summer. But I got this yarn for my birthday last year, so I knew I wanted to knit up something colourwork, and I knew I wanted it to be top down, because I don't like seaming, and I just love the look. Like, it looks very clean and professional when you do like a top down sweater, I think, anyway. So I cast this on in November, and then I went away for the summer to Western Australia, so obviously didn't take that with me, and then we moved house when we got back in January. So it was just sitting there. I had finished most of the colour work at the start of this year, and then I put it down for a while after moving. And then I decided to pick it up again maybe 2 weeks ago. Oh, I got yarn in my mouth. Ugh. So I picked it up again 2 weeks ago and decided that's it. I'm going to finish it. We're going to knit through my stash because we're getting towards the end of the year. It's August already. Let's get it done. So in reality, it's taken me about 6 to 8 months to finish this sweater, but that's not like all of the knitting time. That includes the time that I put it down and, you know, didn't work on it. I knit up the size large, and I decided to do a really high necked like collar. I wanted it to kind of be quite like tight, like a turtleneck, but obviously I'm holding the yarn double, so it's very thick, and also the stitch count is different, so it didn't come out like super tight, which I think is actually really good. Originally I wanted it to be double folded, so it was kind of like this thick collar, like of ribbing, but I decided to, when I tried it on, I thought one fold looked good enough, but we'll see. I mean, it's blocking, it's drying now, so I'll have to try to see what it looks like when I try it on when it's dry. And then I also decided to do a one row of the brown marsh, like the dark brown on the cuff, just to tie in the color work with the lighter base color, because there was no other splash of that dark brown anywhere else in the sweater. The ribbing was done in the base color, and the like the collar and the cuffs and the bottom ribbing were all in the base color, so I was like, I kind of want to have a little bit more of the brown yarn in there. And then I also changed the decrease rate for the sleeves, so I was following the pattern and the sleeves were just looking so big, and I already have this sweater which has quite like big sleeves, and I didn't want that again. I wanted long sleeves, but I wanted them to be like a little bit more fitted. So I started decreasing on the inside and the outside of the sleeve for I think about 4 rounds before the cuff, before the length that I wanted. And I'm happy with how it turned out. When I tried it on pre-blocking, the sleeves were quite short. I like my sleeves to cover my hand like this. But when I tried it on, it was sitting at about here. So at my wrist, which is fine. I don't mind that, but I do like my long sweaters. So I'm hoping that blocking will help that and help it to grow a bit. When I took it out of the water and like squeezed out and dried it off, it had grown quite a bit and was very drapey and beautiful. There was a lot of air in there, and so I think it's going to come out a lot nicer after blocking. Okay, so that's my only big finished object. I have another small one, which is a crochet project that I decided to cast on the other night. I had been seeing all over Pinterest these cute little car hangers. I'd seen them over TikTok as well. And so I decided to make one up just to use up some of my stash yarn. So I made like a fake pothos plant, or no, not a pothos, a string of pearls. And then hung that up in my car. I'll put a picture here because I don't want to go get it from the garage, but it's very cute. And I like it a lot. I think I made too many like leaves, like too many dangly bits, because it looks a little bit busy, but I think it's cute anyway. So and I just followed some YouTube tutorials and used just some shitty acrylic for that. It only took me a couple of hours to make, and it's really cute. So that's my last finished object. Let's move on to whips, because I have a lot. My life is very whip heavy at the moment, and I'm doing my best to work through everything and get things done, but a lot of my whips are big whips, big projects, not a lot of like small moreish projects. So let's start. They're all sitting here on the couch in an absolute mess, so forgive me. First thing I'm going to show you is my Cumulus blouse. This is tangled. This is a pattern by PetiteKnit. You probably will have seen it before if you are part of the knitting community, and if you're basic like me. I am knitting this up in Abbey Road, the Wind Cries Merino, another easily accessible yarn here in Australia from Spotlight. And I love this yarn. It is so soft and so airy. My vision for this sweater was like I've been seeing, you know, like the ballet aesthetic or like the yoga aesthetic on TikTok and whatever. So I was imagining like a really loose, airy, flowy, like top V-neck that you could wear like with leggings, like pre-yoga class kind of vibe, but also I could wear with like linen pants on the beach when I go to WA to visit my family. That's the kind of vibe I was going for. And so I was like, okay, Cumulus blouse, perfect. And then I found a yarn to match the pattern, and I chose the Wind Cries Merino. So it's 65% merino, 25% baby alpaca, and 10% microfiber pliamide. I think it's a chain blown yarn. It's beautiful. I'll try and do some close-ups for you. But I'm knitting this on 4.5mm needles, and that got me gauge. And I think I didn't make a note of what size I'm using. I think it's either a small or a medium. I'm thinking it might be a small because I didn't want it to be too oversized. And I know PetiteKnit patterns can tend to be oversized. And I'm planning to make a modification with this sweater. I haven't even showed you, sorry. I'm planning to omit the I-cord decreases, because I've seen on some project pages on Ravelry and some other people on their podcasts saying that it cinched the bottom in way too much, and I don't want that. I don't want it to look like, you know, like a balloon. I just want it to be straight. So I'm just going to do I-cord. I've never done I-cord before. If you have any tips, please leave them down below. But this is it. Okay. It's in this beautiful grey colour. I split for the sleeves a couple weeks ago and then have just been knitting constantly on the body. It's so much stockinette. I like stockinette. It's like, you know, it's Moorish, like, not Moorish, it's easy, if that makes sense. I like just being able to sit down, put a movie on and just knit. And so I do a lot of cinema knitting because I love going to the movies and taking my knitting with me. So this is a good one for that. But I really want to get the body finished in the next couple of weeks because I am going to Western Australia to see my parents at the end of August. So I want this to be done by then. I might wear this on the plane. I don't have anything else to say about this Cumulus. It just is what it is. I mean, if you want to know more about the patterns and stuff, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail and tell you about like the construction or like the decreases and stuff like that, because I'm not very eloquent with my nitty chat. I am not a designer, so I can't really explain things very well to you, but I will show you. So that's that, Cumulus. The next work in progress on my needles is a baby knit. There are no babies in my life. I mean, my boyfriend's cousin, she had a baby last year. Yeah, last year. She's a year and a half now, 18 months. And that's the only baby in my life. None of my friends have babies. None of my other family members have babies. So I'm just knitting a baby knit because I wanted something quick and small to knit up. So I am making the Good Old Raglan by Twisted Knitwear, or I think it's Karen Court. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. This is a free pattern I found on Ravelry. And I just wanted to do some more stash busting. I was about to start knitting on it. I need to actually show you these things. Okay, so this is it. There are bits everywhere. If you can tell, I don't know if you can tell, I love a top down. I love a raglan, like easy yoke. I like the splitting for sleeves and then knitting on the body and then picking up the sleeves. I love that construction. I find that really satisfying and really easy. So I wanted a small little raglan sweater, simple 1x1 rib at the top, very stretchy, perfect for baby's head. So yeah, I'm knitting this up in stash yarn. This is bargain bin yarn from Spotlight, just easy, cheap yarn that comes in bags. It doesn't give you like gauge. There's no like yarn content written, like there's no ball bands kind of thing. It just comes in a bag and you just get what you get. So I'm knitting that on 5mm needles and I'm knitting this 6 to 9 month size. And in the pattern there are short rows because the pattern actually goes from 0 to 3 month old to 14-year-old. So there's a huge size range for a lot of kids sizes. But I don't see the point in doing short rows in a baby sweater. But if you were knitting up, say, the 13 or 14-year-old size, I would see, you know, a purpose for short rows. But so I've just omitted the short rows and I just kept knitting and doing increases in the raglan until I reached the stitch count specified on the pattern for the size I was knitting. This one, I'm not like stressing about finishing. I don't have a deadline for myself. It's just one of those knits where it's like, if you just need some easy stock in it, like on chunky needles that will give me some quick progress, like a dopamine hit, then that's the one that I jump for. Okay, next whip is a summer knit actually. As I said, I live in the southern hemisphere, so we are in the middle of winter, but everybody, every knitting podcast all over the internet is talking about summer knits. I've seen camis, I've seen blouses, I've seen t-shirts, I've seen skirts and dresses, and I'm really jealous. So in that, you know, in those throes of inspiration, I decided to cast on a t-shirt with some cotton yarn. So this is what I have so far. I'm loving how this is turning out. I'm not somebody who usually goes for like a variegated yarn. I do like my basics and my neutrals, if you can't tell. But I saw this yarn and I was like, I'm liking the blues for summer this year. I'm feeling it. So I decided to go for it. The pattern is the Back to Basics Knit Tee by Lion Brand. Free pattern, you can find it on Ravelry or on the Lion Brand website. And it features a garter stitch, like ribbing on the bottom and then on the sleeves and the collar. And I am knitting it up in this yarn. I hope you can see that. This is Motivera, which is a Spotlight specific yarn. Again, really cheap, was sitting in my stash, needed something to knit with it. It is the Shadow 8 ply, 60% cotton, 40% acrylic. So it is very soft. It's not super drying like a pure 100% cotton, which I love. And the knitted up fabric is just so soft and so drapey. It's beautiful. I'm planning on wearing this with like white linen pants with sandals to the beach kind of vibe. It's knit in panels. So you do the front panel and the back panel, and then you seam them up the sides and then cast on for the sleeves, I believe. I hope that's right. I'm doing the size small, and the only modification I'm making is I'm just changing the length. It is knit bottom up, which I hate. I love a top down, but you know, it's always good to try something new. Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I have not knit on it for a couple of weeks while I was finishing my Nordic nights. So it's been sitting in my stash for a little while, but I'm hoping to get some more work done on this in the next coming months, because I'd love it to be ready for like springtime / summertime. I'm only going to tell you about 2 more whips because I have a lot of languishing whips in my stash. I'm thinking of doing a stash plans video and like a whips sorting video, so like going through things that I'll frog or will finish, things like that. Frog or finish, that's what it's called. Oh my god. So next whip, I'm really upset about this whip. I'm knitting up a Moby sweater by PetiteKnit. I was so excited about this pattern when I first saw it and decided to knit it up. I was like, oh my god, I need that sweater for winter. In my head, it was going to be done by June and I was going to wear it and be a neutral, wintry vibed queen. But obviously that didn't happen, and I'll tell you why. So I'll show you first. There are ends everywhere. This is my Moby. Oh, I just think she's so beautiful. I love it so much. I love the color. Again, a neutral creamy color. I love the pattern. So the Moby, as I said, I'm not really going to explain the construction. It's really hard to explain. It's a paid pattern as well, so I'm sure you probably have it. If you're like me and you love PetiteKnit, you probably already have this pattern, or you've probably already seen somebody talk about it. It was very popular over winter, like last year and the start of this year. There is yarn in my nose, I'm so sorry. So I'll tell you about the yarn that I'm using. It's another Spotlight yarn. Oh, I've wound it up. I got a yarn winder at the end of last year, and I went a little bit crazy. And I caked up all of my stash yarn because I thought it would look pretty, and then some of it got stretched out, and then I lost ball bands, all that shit. This is the yarn, what it looks like in the cake. But I have a white, wait, oh, I don't have it. Okay, I'll put a picture up. It is 4 Seasons half and half, so 50% wool, 50% acrylic, also from Spotlight. And I am knitting a size large, I believe. So the reason why it's languishing is that I split for this, I didn't split for the sleeves, I join in the round. And knit on the body a little bit, got bored, put it down. Then we moved house, and then I picked it up again after we moved house, and I lost where I was in the charts. If you've done the Moby before, you know that you're following like 3 or 4 charts all at one time. And they're all at different rows, and I found it a lot to keep track of. And then, so I lost where I was in the charts. I think my computer deleted the Adobe file or something, or like didn't save my like highlights and my lines and stuff, my drawing. So then I tried picking it up again, and I could not work out for the life of me where I was in the chart. I thought I got it, and then I started knitting, and then I realized that I'd done a cable like 2 rows too early or something, so it looks kind of funny. Where is it? I think it's on this side. It just looked like, I don't know, just something's not right. So I just haven't worked on it. But I really want to have that done by the end of this year. I'd love to have a Moby sweater by the end of this year, and even if I won't be able to wear it. So that's my Moby. I feel like I don't really have anything else to say about it. I enjoy the pattern. It's very Moorish, like you just want to get to the next section. You're like, oh, next cable, and then you go around and you do a knit row, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, let's just get to the next cable row or the next pattern row. So I enjoy the pattern. I love how it looks. I love the style of the Moby, but I just think it just is going to take me so long to knit, and I just need the motivation to knit it up, and I just don't have it at the moment because I'm lost in my pattern. Anyway, that's my Moby. Oh. Now, the last whip that I have, it's a pretty big one, so I'll do my best to show you what it looks like. It's a crochet project, and it is self-drafted, so I'm not following a pattern or anything. And it is a granny square blanket. I'll just extend my loop so I don't drop stitches. It's a granny square blanket. I hope you can see that. This is knit up using some stash yarn. This is 4 Seasons acrylic, again from Spotlight. We'll get into my like knitting crochet journey in the knitty chat part of this video, but I have a lot of acrylic, so I decided to knit up a blanket. This is the acrylic, the green, and then the white is also from Stash, and it is one of those bargain bin yarns again where they don't give you like gauge or anything like that. I've knit up groups of 10 granny squares, and I'm using the join as you go method to join them together. I'm not really feeling any pressure with this one. It's sort of just a long-standing whip that I'm just slowly making progress on. It's a good one for when I'm, you know, needing some quick progress. But I'll be honest, the join as you go method, honestly, I don't think it's any faster than if you were to do like a border row and then sew them together using a sewing machine. I don't think it's any faster than that, but it feels like you're doing more crochet as opposed to making all the boxes or the squares and then doing seaming, because seaming just feels like it takes forever. Yeah, so those are all my finished objects and all my whips. I'm gonna move on to some plans because I don't have any acquisitions. As I said, I'm trying to knit from Stash, so I want to do like a full Stash plans video so I can tell you all of my plans, because I have a lot, and I'll only touch on a few now with you, but there are a lot of plans. So after knitting the Sunday socks and seeing how fast they knit up and how much I actually enjoyed them, I've decided I want to do some Sunday socks for gift knits for Christmas this year. So I'm going to start making my Christmas list, so who I'm going to be knitting for and then who I'm going to be buying for, and then deciding from there who I'm going to knit Sunday socks for. And I think I want to get started fairly soon on those and have those as like my smaller quick projects to just have on the side when I'm going to the movies or in the car or on the plane, things like that. Just some small quick knits. So that's my Christmas plan so far. Now, the other thing I want to cast on, I'm having like Ingrid sweater fever. I have some white balls of the half and half. The same yarn I'm using for the Moby. And I would love to cast on the Ingrid, but I've told myself over and over and over, like every day for the last week, finish your Moby before you do your Ingrid. And I think that's fair. I think that I'll be able to do that. So I'm thinking probably cast it on next year, eventually. I want to knit up a camisole number 5 for summer this year. I've knit one up before in a white yarn, but I didn't do the finishings as suggested in the pattern. I don't even know what I did. I can't remember. I'll get it out and I'll put a picture up here. So the neck hole is really tight and the armholes are quite tight. But that was knit up in a cotton yarn that I unraveled a thrifted sweater with. Like it was from a thrifted sweater that I unraveled. But I have a different color of the Vera Moda Shadow cotton yarn, and I think if I used a 3mm needle I might be able to get gauge. We'll see. I'll try. You'll probably see my gauge swatch in the next podcast episode if I knit it up. Along that same line, there are a lot of like summer cast-ons that I want to cast on, because now that we're in August, I'm like, okay, winter's almost over, even though it's going to get even colder before it gets warmer. But I'm seeing a lot of summer inspiration, like Knitting Traditions. I just watched her latest podcast episode, and you know, she's got this beautiful t-shirt on and like the weather's nice, and so I'm feeling the summer cast-ons. One thing that I'd love to cast on is Blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I've seen that everywhere and I love how it looks. I think it's beautiful. I think that if I knit it up in like a white or like a cream neutral, I think it would be so beautiful for summer. The other thing that I want to cast on for summer is a crochet dress. I want to do a mesh dress. I found a couple of patterns. I'll put some pictures up here and link them down below, but I really can't decide which one I want to do. I've tried a couple times to do like a self-drafted mesh design, but when I self-draft things, they just never come out how I imagine them in my mind, so it's just easier to just follow a pattern. And then, yeah, I've spoken about how I want to do the stash plans video, and I might film that next week. We'll see, and just talk through all of my stash and what I want to do. The other thing in my plans, I have quite a lot of the Flirtalope left in the marsh, the heathered marsh or marsh heather colorway. So I'm thinking of holding that single on its own and seeing what kind of gauge I get. But I don't know what project to knit up holding that yarn single. So if you have any suggestions on what to do with Flirtalope held single, let me know in the comments below, because I'm not 100% sure, but I love it. I love it so much, and I can't wait to start wearing my Nordic nights. But I'd love to be able to knit something a bit more flowy and airy and less chunky with it. So let's do some knit and chat. If you're not here for some knit and chat, that's okay. Feel free to hop off this video, that's fine. I hope you enjoyed. It's nice to meet you. Hopefully you stick around and come back for another podcast episode. I'm hoping to do some knitting vlogs and some other sort of knitting related videos over the next couple of weeks, to sort of just see how this channel goes and see if it's something that I can fit into my life. So yeah, hopefully see you around. Otherwise, if you are here for the knit and chat, grab your knitting if you don't already have it. I hope that you do, because that's all I do whilst watching podcasts. I am working on my good old Raglan. So what have I been watching lately? Podcasts. I'm all over the knitting podcasts. I think I've almost exhausted YouTube of knitting podcasts. There are a couple that I feel like I just can't watch. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not for me, which is okay. I think one of them that I thought I would get into but just couldn't was Andrea Mowry's I'll Knit If I Want To podcast. And I don't know, it just wasn't really my cup of tea. My cup of tea is Penrose Knits. I think I'm addicted to her channel. I love her so much and I love her content. And I love how she openly talks about her mental health and her, mental health journey and learning things about herself that impact the way she lives her life. And I found that really inspiring. So I rewatch her videos all the time. I'm waiting. I'm hoping it comes out today for her last episode of Vlogmas in July to be posted. She's just done Vlogmas in July and it was the highlight of my month, honestly. It's got me through quite a bit this month. My boyfriend just moved away to join the military, so I'm now living alone for the first time in 4 years. So having something to look forward to every day was really, well, most days, because she didn't do it every day, was something really, it was really great. I've also recently got into the Norwegian knitter. I'm not sure of her name. I'm really bad with names, but I'll put her channel here. I really enjoy her content. I love the aesthetic and just the chill vibes. I love project vlogs. I love when people show the process of picking a pattern, picking a yarn, casting it on. I really love those kinds of vlogs, and she's done a couple of those. She does a lot of like week of knitting vlogs, which I really enjoy as well. A recent one that has just come out is the Hester and Lark knitting podcast. I think her name's Lily. I think. And she's lovely. She's so eloquent, and just seems so kind. And I love her content. I love her podcast so far. She's done a podcast, I think, every week for the last 3 weeks, I think, or the last maybe 2 weeks, something like that. She's a very prolific knitter, which is very inspiring for me. But overall, I love the way she speaks and talks about her knitting. I find her really inspiring. And then also I've been watching a bit of Knee Knits lately. I love her like aesthetic as well. I like that she knits in quite neutral colors. And I like the way she speaks about her knitting as well. It's very inspiring. And then obviously Knitting Traditions. Latest podcast came out today, which I enjoyed. And then also Handmade by Florence. I love her. I love that she commits to the neutral aesthetic of just knitting in like whites and creams and sometimes blues. I love that. I knit up a pattern by her. I've knit up her simple sweater and really enjoyed that pattern. I might wear that in my next podcast. We'll see. Maybe I'll wear my Nordic nights, but I really liked the way that she wrote out her pattern. I thought it was very clear and very succinct, and I love the way she talks about her knitting as well. Very inspiring. So those are the podcasts I've been watching. In terms of TV, I have just finished a week-long Harry Potter marathon. As I said, I'm on night shift at the moment, so my sleep schedule has been a bit ridiculous and I'm exhausted. So I find that I need to fall back on things that are familiar, that make me feel like comfortable and cozy. So just had a Harry Potter marathon over the last week. And then also the new season of The Witcher came out. I'm only on episode 2 of volume 1. as I said, because I've been on night shift and because my boyfriend's moved away, I need things that are familiar, and things that provide comfort. So watching a new TV show, like a new season that I haven't seen before, I find like quite difficult. I think it's a part of my anxiety. And so rewatching old shows, it like makes me feel safe, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm finding it a bit hard to get into this season of The Witcher, but I've seen clips and I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, so hopefully I'll get into some more of that later this week. Now, in terms of things that I'm reading, I'm currently reading Happy Place by, I think, Emily Henry. I'm reading this with a couple of my friends from work for a little romance book club that we have. This was the July book, but I'm only 50 pages in. So I feel a bit guilty that I'm so far behind, but a lot has happened in my life over the last month, so they're being very kind about that. But I've just actually found it difficult to get into. I binged not last month, but June's book. What did we read in June? Icebreaker. We read Icebreaker in June, and I really liked that. But then I just found it really difficult to get into this book this month. The other things I've been reading is A Court of Thorns and Roses, that series. I'm up to A Court of Wings and Ruin. I think I have about 100 pages left, but I just, after Akamath, I'm like, where's the steam? Where's the excitement? Like, I feel like there's a lot of politics going on at the moment in the book, and it's just sort of dragging on a little bit. So I haven't read that for about 2 months now, which is a shame. But I am enjoying that series a lot, and I'm excited to read. I've just bought the other day A Court of Frost and Starlight, so I'm excited to read that. And then obviously I'm excited to read the last one for obvious reasons. I haven't spoiled it for myself, but if you have TikTok and you're on Akatar TikTok, you know about this book. So, and then the other one, I caved to Book Talk popularity and I bought Fourth Wing the other day by Rebecca Yarros, and I'm excited to read that one because I've heard a lot of hype about that book. And the second one is coming out, I think, in a couple of months, maybe next year, I'm not sure, but I'm excited to read that. I like a bit of fantasy, I like a bit of romance, so if you have any recommendations along those lines, feel free to leave them down below. But I am on TikTok. I am on Book Talk. So a lot of the general very popular books I probably will have already seen and are on my TBR. I will link my Goodreads. So feel free to give me a follow over there if you want to see what I'm reading. I'm in a bit of a reading slump at the moment, just because I'm obsessing over knitting and I've got a lot of work stuff going on at the moment. But hopefully I can pick my reading up again. I've got 2 weeks off coming up and I'm traveling to see my family in Western Australia, as I've said 17 times. So hopefully I can pick up some more reading whilst I'm over there and track it all on Goodreads. I think that's all from me today. I'll stop knitting so I can actually concentrate and tell you what I'm thinking. Yeah, I think that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, I'm really glad that I did this, and glad that I have finally recorded this because I like talking about my knitting. I like sharing it with other people, but a lot of the people in my life don't know much about knitting or especially don't knit themselves. So there's people doing gardening outside, I'm sorry. A lot of the people in my life don't do knitting themselves, so yeah, I wanted to start this channel so I could tell someone about my knitting and sort of connect with other knitters online. So yeah, I hope you stick around. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.